Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. We are joined today by director Lucky McKee, whose new movie, Old Man, is premiering in theaters, digital, video on demand, Friday, October 14th. Lucky, thank you so much for being here with us today. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Are you
I'm
excited about?
excited. I have a movie coming out this Friday. That's exciting,
I
right?
mean, come on, it doesn't get any better than that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a privilege. Yeah.
So let me ask you, when you got the nod to direct Old Man, was Stephen Lang already attached to the film?
No, he wasn't. This started with Mark Center actually. Mark Center brought me this script. Mark, is not only a great actor, but he has also been working in the producing game. And this script came to him from an old friend of his that had turned an old play that he had written into a screenplay. And Mark and I had, for many years had I had produced a film. When I first met him, I had produced a film called The Lost, the Jack Ketchum adaptation that he was the lead in. And ever since then, we had always really, really wanted to connect on something as as director and actor. We dabbled a little bit on this anthology film, Tales of Halloween. He played a husband character for me, but we never had that chance to have like a full meal of a feature together.
Mm-hmm.
And Old Man just seemed to kind of present that opportunity, and slowly but surely we started putting all the right pieces together. And once it came down to like who is the old man going to be, we went through the typical lists of names and all that kind of stuff. And Stephen Lang just turned out to be the perfect fit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
script is written by Joel Vake. He wrote
Joel Veach. Yeah,
Veach.
Joel
Sorry,
Veach. Yeah,
Joel Veach
yeah,
wrote
yeah.
the script. Did you work with? Because you're also a writer yourself. Did you and
Yeah.
Joel work together to polish the script, or was it all 100% Joel?
Well, it's the script is 100% Joel, but my biggest fear, but also the thing that really pulled me to the material was like, okay, how are we going to make it captivating? Two men in a cabin for 90 plus minutes. So about a month before we started prep, once we knew the film in Pinocchio terms was a real boy, so to speak, it was something that was definitely going to happen. Joel and I took about a month, and we would read it. I would read a section of the script. I would make a bunch of notes and kind of generate a bunch of ideas and thoughts and always kind of pushing like, how do we kind of make sure that we bring this more into a cinematic space? Because it could very well, it obviously started as a play and it has its roots there, but I want to make a movie, right? So we just went over and over the script for about a month, and again, I never touched the script. It's all Joel's writing, but it came from a lot, we really really brought the material to like a whole new exciting place, just kind of going back and forth, and me kind of giving him my perspective as a director and just saying, well, yeah, I mean, like, that's a long run of expositional dialogue right there. How about we do it in a visual way? And we'd start talking about ways of doing that. We just came to a great place by the end of that process.
Now, you mentioned this was a play, and it's weird because as I was watching the film, I'm like, I was actually wondering, this would be a great 1 to 2 person Broadway play
Oh
because
yeah,
it's
totally.
carried entirely by Stephen. Then Mark, of course, as well, does a great job
Yeah,
to help Stephen out. Now,
yeah.
is that done often where a movie script is written for it to be a show play, but it just works better as a film? What's your experience with that when it comes to writing?
Well, I know so little about the theater. Actually, I've never really dabbled in theater. It's never really had a pull with me. Uh, so I don't really know. I mean, all I know is just kind of this specific case. I mean, obviously, a ton of great plays have been made into films. I mean, one of my favorite writers of all time is Tennessee Williams.
Yeah,
And so many of his great stage productions, found their way into the film world and became some of my favorite films as well.
absolutely.
So
Now moving on to Stephen Lang, he is just an amazing actor. I mean, what more can you say about Stephen? His
he really is.
character in Old Man at some points resembles his character in Don't Breathe. Is that because there are just some similarities to the two characters, or was it your choice for him to sort of bring that out. That's just my interpretation. It doesn't mean it actually happened or
Yeah,
not.
yeah, I can see people making that association. I think they're very, very different types of films. Like what makes their motor run. I think I think the connection that people are projecting onto uh, the connections that people are projecting onto it are that's on the audience. It's not on me. And I think that obviously the common factor here is Stephen Lang.
Yeah, absolutely.
His approach to things. Um, but it's a very I can see the similarities that people are talking about, but I'm not ultra familiar with the Don't Breathe movies. I haven't seen the second one yet, and I saw the first one when it was in theaters. I think Fede Alvarez is a fantastic filmmaker. I think his Evil Dead remake is like one of the best horror
Yes,
movies of the
I
last
agree.
10 years or so, just balls to the wall, like a real horror movie. And I thought Don't Breathe was a really, really fun follow up. But yeah, there was nothing conscious
Okay.
on my end. Nothing conscious on my end to make a connection between the two.
Now, shooting the film, any film, with a limited cast in a single location, for our audience watching, those who are not filmmakers, they would assume that it's a lot less challenging as having to work with a big cast, having to go to multiple locations. Describe the differences. This film is contained into a single cabin. Stephen Ruiz is the primary character. What was it like?
Well, it's almost more difficult,
Hmm.
in terms of your flexibility in the edit. Is just one example. I mean, this is a movie that primarily takes place in real time. One thing leads to the next, and there's no cutting ahead to anything. There's no cutting the dull bits out. There's all. Obviously, when we got to the edit, we found ways to compress here and there and modulate the pace and everything. But working in real time is a real challenge. Working in a single location is a tremendous filmmaking challenge. How do you keep something captivating without your stylistic notions getting in the way of
Yeah.
these great performances that are going on? So I studied the masters. I mean, if you look at what Sidney Lumet does in a film like 12 Angry Men, you don't realize how much that movie is transforming visually over the course of it, right?
Yeah.
The movie starts off, but if you take a step back from it and you really start analyzing it, you realize, oh, wait a second. The beginning of the movie, everything's shot on long lenses, and slowly but surely over the course of the movie, the lenses get
Yeah.
wider and wider and wider, and there's more depth, and it kind of sneaks up on you in a very, very kind of like sneaky subconscious way. So those techniques are something that we pulled from, and then also just just constantly challenging ourselves to keep changing it up visually, and kind of just always making sure that whatever we were doing visually was at the service of what was going on in the given dramatic moment.
That's great information. Thank you for sharing that. Now, going to the
Yeah.
limited cast with Steven and Mark being the two primary players on the screen, you got to have a lot of trust in your performers, your actors, to carry the film. Was that ever an issue when it came to Steven and Mark? I mean, once they were cast, you knew you had all the trust in the world that those two can pull this thing off.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you still hear me? One of my
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
earbuds. Okay. Um, uh, that's where rehearsal was really crucial. I mean, early on in the preparation of the film, a few weeks before shooting, we would get on Zoom. It was heavy COVID times. This was January, February, 2021. So we were very much working in a bubble, and it was, there was no vaccination yet. So it
Yeah.
was, it was just what it was. That was the way we had to work. So all of our rehearsals took place on Zoom. But that's where we really cracked a lot of everything, and that's where I really gained a lot of confidence about what the film could be, and it gave me a lot of confidence on what those guys were going to do. So by the time we showed up on set, I was very confident with the choices they made, the approaches they made to the characters. Mark really, really found his character's voice during that rehearsal
Mm,
process. And then, again, like I was saying about Slang, he has such a tremendous, his feet firmly planted in the theater world, and he'd done so many plays over the years, and that's a whole different mindset than film acting. It's not just about memorizing your few lines or a few
yeah.
scenes that you have to do on a given day. It's like these guys could memorize a whole script and they could go plug into it. wherever they need to. And they also had the ability, Mark had this ability as well, is to do 10-minute, 12-minute runs of dialogue, without cutting the camera. And you start getting really organic performances that way, because they can stay in it for so long. You're not calling cut every 2 or 3 sentences or every little moment or whatever. And I think we got really, really good, exciting performances that way.
Absolutely. Now let's go a little deeper into Steven's character, who's just called the old man.
Yeah.
He has the maturity of a little child. Now, in your opinion, and this is again going to be left up to the viewer's opinion, is that something that is out of his control, or is it the result of living a lifelong with guilt on his conscience and with his demons?
It's very much a story about a man that's been consumed by his own guilt and regret, and I think that, for me personally, he represents a big fear that I think a lot of us have, is are we going to end up alone talking to ourselves?
Yeah.
Are we gonna or are we gonna act in a way, or pay penance, or ask for forgiveness for bad things that we've done, or like, will we be able to navigate this world well enough to where by the time we're in our 70s, that we're surrounded by love and warmth and all of these things. So there's he represents a big fear that I have, because I've seen that with men in my life that have kind of ended up that way. Maybe not quite as extreme as he ended up, but close enough, to where it's made it a real fear. Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with why I connected with the material so much, because it spoke to that fear that I have.
The timing of the reveals in any movie is critical for it to be executed properly. It's done very well in Old Man. Do you have a specific approach on the timing of when? Because there are a lot of reveals in this film, all the way to the end. Is there a specific approach that you use to when you think the reveal is going to work best for the film?
Well, I think that the way this film is constructed, you'll know what I'm talking about with the way it ends. I mean, the ending of the film is an invitation to watch the entire film over again.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, you start to realize how many more reveals were taking place than you had than you really had an idea were taking place. There are those big reveals, but I think that we see it a lot. There's a lot of movies that are all about that big twist ending, or that big shocking moment where everything turns on its ear or something. But if the whole film, lives and dies by that one reveal or that one moment, I think ultimately it can reveal how shallow a film is. So hopefully, people will, they'll have that big. It's enough of a realization to where they can go back and watch the movie again and see it and have completely different set of feelings watching it a second time than they do the first time. You won't ever be able to reproduce that feeling you had the first time you watched it, which is really exciting to me. But hopefully when they do go back and look at it a second time, that a bunch of stuff kind of starts revealing itself and opening up, and you kind of realize how much care and hopefully subtlety, went into making it all feel correct by the time it got to that ending.
Absolutely. There's a toast that Joe and the old man make to death and beauty. The reason why I bring it up is because it's mentioned again towards the end of the film. Is there any kind of significance to that toast?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's it, right? I mean, like that's nature and that's life, and that's I mean, it's our existence is at once beautiful and terrifying, and the biggest fear of all is death, and how it's going to come, and what the circumstances will be. Will it be a surprise, or will it be something that we know is coming? And I also think that if you've ever lived long stretches of time isolated in the middle of nowhere and are kind of closer to nature in that way, you realize that there is a beauty in the way nature works, and that it's really easy for human beings to forget that they're a part of all of that. We have the fortunate and yet unfortunate ability to be conscious of a lot more than the other creatures on this planet are
Absolutely, yeah.
capable of, which is is a blessing and a curse at the same time. And that duality I think is really fascinating.
Now, the ending was just so perfect how it ties into the whole film. As far as you know, was that just the ending? Were there any other endings that were discussed or toyed around with, or was it that was it? It's perfect. Let's not mess with it. With it.
It was always the that was yeah
Yeah.
that was always the ending from the very beginning. And I think that sorry, there's someone's
No,
building a
it's
set
okay.
out here in our shop. But yeah, I mean that ending was there from the very beginning, but then the big part of working over the script and building the way the film kind of functions and everything was just making sure that we earned that, and that felt that didn't feel like it came completely out of left field, that
Mm-hmm.
it was a reveal that was like, oh yeah, that this now everything, it kind of locks everything together in your head.
Absolutely. Now, you wrote and directed the very successful 2002 film May. Would you say,
Yeah.
looking back now, that was your big break in entertainment?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. May's what I haven't had to do any other. I haven't had to get a day job since I made May. I've been able to do nothing but concentrate on making things up since I had the opportunity to share that with everybody. So that movie, I owe everything to that movie. It
That's
was kind of a way for me to it was my first kind of scream, my first kind of scream out to the world, like here I am,
uh,
and the movie even starts off with a scream, which I think is pretty appropriate. Like, okay, we're going to be dealing with a lot of pain and a lot of feelings here.
all right.
I hope you're ready for this. Yeah.
We're almost out of time, but I want to ask you one final question. The film, like we
Mhm.
said in the beginning, is being released October 14th. There are a lot of horror movies coming out October 14th. Most notably, of course, is Halloween Ends.
Sure.
Does that worry you at all that this is coming out
Oh
in
gosh, no.
theaters? I mean, no,
No,
no.
it doesn't worry me at all. Halloween is a completely different sort of headspace, and a completely, it's just a completely different beast. I think there's room for all of that. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's room for all different types of dark films. No, there's plenty of room for everything. And if the movie is any good, it's not about the opening weekend.
I
It's not
agree.
about its initial release or anything. It's like May here.
Exactly.
It's like
Over
people are still
time, over
talking about that
time.
movie 20 years later. People are
Mm-hmm.
still finding that movie and connecting with it, which is really great. It's like the goal is to create something that has staying power.
How many movies have been released that have gotten trashed by critics? And you know what?
Oh,
I always tell
a lot of
people,
most of my
yeah,
favorite movies,
yeah.
actually.
I always tell
So
people history is the best judge of how good a film is.
yeah,
Over the years, word of mouth, and so on.
yeah. For me, it just has to do well enough so I can make more. That's all.
Exa-
That's the only requirement here.
Absolutely,
If it's a big sensation, that would be great, but it's
absolutely.
not something I'm holding my breath for. I just
Lucky,
hope it connects with the right people.
I want to thank you so much for coming on here. For everyone, again, the film is called Old Man. It is coming out to theaters, digital, and video on demand. I'm assuming Shutter as well as also video on demand. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know where. Yeah,
yeah, it is an
it's
RLJE film, and those all
yeah.
go to
I'm
Shutter.
sure it'll end up on Shutter at some point or
Absolutely,
another.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
check
Some
out.
one of AMC's
You're gonna
outlets. Yeah.
You guys are going to love this movie. Please check it out. You won't be disappointed. Stephen Lang's amazing. Lucky did a great job directing this film. It's going to keep you captivated and guessing the whole way through. Lucky, thank you again so much. I want to thank our audience who have tuning in to watch this interview. On behalf of Lucky McKee and myself, stay safe. And until next time, guys, stay walking. Bye bye.